Fourth season of Transformers Animated is something I had on the back burner of my brain for quite a few years, actually. In like 5th grade, I started jotting down ideas. It was mostly just incoherent scribbling of ideas documenting the conclusion to everyone's story. And it sucked because I was in 5th grade. I had no intention of ever doing anything with it. It was just for my own free time whenever I was bored. But that changed in August 2017 when I discovered Transformers Animated: Trial and Error, a fan-made conclusionary comic by Chris McFeely and Jim Sorensen. So reading some of that online really made me grapple with the reason for my own story's existence at all, as I quickly realized that they had the exact same plot. Optimus, Ratchet, and Jazz deal with Sentinel and the impending trial and breakout of Megatron, while Bumblebee, Bulkhead, and Sari enter the depths of Cybertron to search for her origin, aided by Alpha Trion and Arcee. The Trial and Error comic immediately made my own story obsolete in its own existence, as it was just a better version of it. So then I started fiddling around with mine to counter this, trying to find an organic way to change the plot points. Then I had one idea that fundamentally transformed my own version of the story into something completely deserving of its own identity. And that is, what if the Autobots had left Earth? I had this idea of Sentinel approaching a disheartened Optimus, begrudgingly asking for help. That was so striking, and its integration changed everything. What if Sari had had the Autobots ripped away from her with no conclusion to her own story, very reminiscent of how us, as an audience, had been feeling about the cancellation of Transformers Animated? It added a layer of meta and poignancy that really rejuvenated my interest in writing it. The decision to push the series a decade forward, inspired by the 10th anniversary of the series, meant 3 things for the universe inside the show. 1, there'd be no trial of Megatron a decade later. It was inappropriate to have something as big as his breakout happen off-screen, which meant that Megatron had to be incarcerated and behind bars at the time this story started, the trial having already succeeded. Secondly, Ultra Magnus would be long offline. Sentinel is the permanent Magnus of Cybertron at this point in the story, and any major quaffs regarding his leadership would have died down by this point. 3. Sari Sumdac would be an adult, and the cast would be considerably older. I was still not really going to do anything. I tentatively considered the idea of storyboarding it, which I'd never done before, never done a single storyboard. Now, I was consciously aware from the beginning that it would not turn out as great as I envisioned it in my head, and I was completely right in that regard. I knew there was no way I'd be able to voice all of the characters, so in October 2017, I went to the only place I could think of, the theater department of my high school, at the time a sophomore. I compiled some montages of the characters in the show talking, showed them to Miss Plum, the theater teacher, and asked her if there were any students she thought would be able to do them. Then the next step was really as fun as approaching people and saying, "Hey, Dio, I know I've never talked to you before in my life, but do you want to voice a seductive techno-organic mutant spider in my Transformers fanfiction?" And they all said yes. It's kind of funny because the vast majority of people barely know what Transformers are. The only understanding they have, if any, comes from the Michael Bay movies, and thus I was treated to comments such as, "Wait, why does Bumblebee talk in this? I didn't expect emotional depth in Transformers." And my personal favorite, "Isn't Omega Supreme a Taco Bell burrito?" But before long, I had the show casted, and I was scheduling individual voice recording sessions for each actor from December to May. I recorded Resurgence 1 and 2 in December, Resurgence 3 and Truck Not Monkey in January, Devastation and The Sound of Music in February, Con Job and Mirror Mirror in March, What a Tangled Web We Weave, Allsparklips Now 1 and 2 in April, and finally Optimus Rising 1 and 2 in May, rounding out the school year. Of course, that's only 13 episodes. I never planned on doing the eventual 16. What a Tangled Web We Weave was later renamed to Ideals, because it fit the episode better, and it wound up being 32 minutes long once I was done. And since I voiced pretty much all of the characters in that episode besides Black Arachnia and Slipstream, I just scripted another 10 minutes of flashbacks to flesh the episode out and split it into a 2-parter, which I think really worked in its favor, actually. The Machine Shuriken Candidate was a last-minute decision to remake episode 6. That was written in one day during the summer when I had a fever and I threw up and passed out the day I wrote that episode, if you can't tell.
Everything's going great.
I recorded it in September of the next school year. Then finally, I incorrectly assumed that Optimus Rising Part 2 was long enough to split into a two-parter, because I didn't want to do 15, I was going to do 16, but it turns out it wasn't quite long enough, so I kind of had to drastically add and stretch out Part 2 and 3, recording it the next school year alongside the Machine Shuriken Candidate. Luckily, I had Swindle, and Swindle is the best character to pad for time with. Oh, come on, why all the optic rolls? This is the Decepticon capital, after all. And what's a capital without a little capitalism? No, seriously, please buy my stuff. And originally, my friend Kian Canepa was the voice of Swindle, but when I realized how much I was gonna need to expand Optimus Rising, I recasted it as myself, and I, doubled the dialogue. But it was so much fun playing Swindle. I wrote the final drafts of the episodes all sort of at the same time, and I believe they were all completed by March. Con Job was actually the first script I finished, and it's part of what pushed me towards really producing this, because I loved that script. When putting pen to paper, metaphorically because I typed it, I always tried to study the series as intensely as I could and think, does something like this already exist that I can reuse? As such, the bomb Cyclonus uses to detonate Kaon is the same model Starscream planted on Megatron in Transform and Rollout Part 1. The War Memorial Museum that Slipstream attacks in Resurgence Part 1 is the same one featured in Lost and Found and Garbage In, Garbage Out. Initially in the script I had that as an Air Force base, but I changed it to the War Memorial Museum when I decided to reuse the location. The gladiatorial arena in Ideals is the same one which later gets used in the Stunticon Job. I also had a lot of fun drawing little visual references, such as the crashed Lugnut Supreme on Dinobot Island, or Cade's truck actually being the planned basis for Ironhide's Earth mode, which I put in there just because I knew he wasn't gonna end up being there. And thus began Resurgence Part 1. I hate it. I despise it with every fiber of my being. Rewatching it makes me feel pain, and actually shocks me that people are so positively receptive of it as they are. I honestly felt this way at the time I made it too. This isn't one of those things that I used to be so proud of but had a turnaround. I was overly self-conscious about it from the day I uploaded it, but I was just so determined to get it up on the exact 10th anniversary of the series. Every single frame is an individual hand-drawn image. Every time there's a filter over a shot, I cut a plastic sheet out of my binder and place it on the document scanner. I had no concept of digital editing or keyframes, and actually spent the longest time on Resurgence Part 1 than any other episode. I spent a whole 2 months on this piece of crap and actually wound up redrawing the vast majority of the episode. You think what you got is bad? Well, you're right, but it used to be worse. It's a visual nightmare, completely disjointed shot composition, no sense of space or scale. This had to happen somewhere, though. I wasn't gonna start out with god-level material. This whole storyboard series is essentially my origin story, and it can only go up from here. The storyboards look way better towards the end of the line, and that couldn't have happened if I didn't struggle here first. I discovered green screen at the very tail end of episode 1. There's a singular shot of Slipstream moving towards the bomb, which, of course, the black bar moves with her, because it was the first time I'd ever done that. So I had no concept of transparent PNGs until episode 6. So for the first 5.5 episodes, I was digitally, one bit at a time, mapping around each image in Google Drawing to get a green screen behind it. I did this for 5 months. I'm genuinely proud of some of the episodes, character journeys, and emotional moments that I achieved through this, though. Optimus willingly sacrificing his life to make up for the hand he had in Black Arachnia's fate, Bulkhead offering the Constructicons redemption and their acceptance of it, Lockdown sacrificing his spark is a huge highlight for me, and especially the death of Megatron and Sumdac, getting closure regarding the demons who have haunted him for 60 years. I think that Ideals did a fantastic job of dimensionalizing Megatron, Blitzwing, Lugnut, and Shockwave, really dissecting them, revealing what makes them tick, and in the case of Lugnut, setting his character in a new, unexpected direction. Largely every beat which I do take pride in is that which I wrote. Someday, once my skills improve even further, I may very well look back at all of these and see them as a cluttered mess. Once again though, this is the first time I ever attempted something like this, and especially as a high school sophomore at the time, it was never going to be the best thing ever. But I learned so much about this, what works for a story, what doesn't, the production process, shot composition, and a ton beyond that I won't get into in this video. This won't be the end of my little projects like this, and hopefully I'll be doing it professionally one day, because I love it, and not just storyboarding. I'm only a junior at the moment, but once the option opens up to my class, I plan to apply the heck out of scholarships in art schools. I'm gonna work to get there. I've dealt with rejection, I've dealt with financial insecurity. I've been saving my money for the last 4 years to get as big of a savings as I can. Although Transformers action figures have made saving very difficult. To get to LA and to start a career. But let's talk short term. This channel. I've got a lot of comments asking if it'll continue, if we'll get a season 5. I have ideas, sure, but they're all pointless because Optimus Rising tried to give every character a conclusion to their story and resolve every plot thread. Essentially, the storyboards have put the show to rest, narratively speaking, and a season 5 would be like ripping them out of the grave. So, no season 5. But keep in mind that the channel is called Transformers Animated Season 4. So once Season 4 is done, I don't really have much reason to upload. Maybe in the future I might have some Transformers review or animation which I could tack on there, but don't expect much at this point. If you're at all interested in seeing my future work, you feel free to keep an eye on my regular old channel, Kian Carlisle. That's my name. At the moment, there's just some videos I've made for my school with my friend Kian. We're both named Kian. I'm the shorter Kian. Ever since the storyboard finished, I've pretty much spent this entire time over Christmas break just studying techniques and getting practice. Got a bunch of books to help me practice technique. I'll be shifting to digital storyboarding. It won't be Transformers related stuff, just to clarify, which is a big part of why I won't be posting it here. I'll have some scripts set aside for like Gravity Falls, Phineas and Ferb, original stuff for me, etc. Hopefully that channel from day 1 to day final is just going to show massive growth as I keep tackling every learning curve in front of me and get better. Which is something that couldn't really happen here with the monthly deadlines. So, that's it. Spent about 16 months dedicating like every minute of free time I had to these things, and your responses were just so consistently positive. I think the best way to end this is by just saying thank you. You guys were so encouraging consistently, and in a way I didn't expect. I thought it'd be pretty panned right off the bat, but it was just so positive relentlessly, and I'll never forget that, so thank you very much.